I've been waiting for this very moment for a little bit over a year now. So let me give you a backtrack. So August 27th of last year, I began this journey known as the Green to Gold Active Duty Option Program. Through this process, I'll go through school, I go through tactical tests, physical exams, and a plethora of other things that ultimately decide whether you get a certain job or branch, as we call it in the United States Army, on the officer side. So on the officer side of the house, they determine exactly what type of branch, what type of job you'll be doing for the next 3 to 5 years of your career. And the other day, I finally got my branch. If you'd like to find out what I got during my branch reveal, stay tuned. What's chill, world? Welcome back to another episode of Kiro. Try again. What's chill, world? Welcome back to another episode of Kiro, the channel where we give you financial tips, productivity videos, fitness videos, and military advice so that you can improve yourself in all facets. I'm your host, Kiro, aka Ruck of the Goat. And if you're new to the channel, if you found this video helpful in any way, please consider subscribing and hitting that post notification bell so that you'll be the first to know when new content becomes available. Now, before I tell you exactly what branch I got, I would like to go through a brief of the top 5 branches that I put on my OML. So there are 17 or possibly 16 branches in the United States military on the officer side of the house that you're able to choose from. However, in essence of time, I'll just go over the top 5 that I had on my list, starting with number 5. So number 5 on my list, I picked the Transportation Corps. The reason I picked the Transportation Corps because I felt that transportation in the civilian sector is somewhat a good fallback plan. So transportation involves the movement of vehicles, vessels, or boats, if you like to call it that, airplanes, things of that nature. I feel that that'd be a very lucrative field to go into as a fallback plan. It wasn't my first choice, but however, it's a great fallback plan because there are various firms in the civilian sector that have 18-wheelers and things of that nature that they need to transport around the globe to make commerce happen. Number 4. The number 4 choice I had on my list was the Finance Corps. The Finance Corps, for those of you who don't know, is the smallest branch in the United States military for officers. Finance Corps, as the name would suggest, it handles the money, the pay for all of the soldiers, all of the officers, all the warrant officers, all the DA civilians, things of that nature. The Finance Corps manages a lot of the money. That's a no-brainer. Finance is a field that is highly needed in the military world as well as the civilian sector. So I thought that the Finance Corps would be a great choice. I actually had the Finance Corps as number 1, but due to the high level of branch detail percentage on that branch, for those of you who don't know what the branch detail process is, it's basically where you go to a separate branch for a few years, usually combat arms, which will be chemical corps, it'll be going to infantry, it'll be going to armor corps, which deals with tanks, or field artillery, which deals with like projectiles, mortars, things of that nature. You'll go to some combat type arms branch for, I would say, 3 years, something around that range. And then after those years are complete, you go to the branch that you would actually like. So you'll go hang out doing some combat cool stuff for 3 years. And then once you're done, you would go into the Finance Corps or whatever branch that you want to do that for. I've been in the military for coming up on 7 years prior to this whole process. So for me being in the military for a while, I personally did not want to do a branch detail. So that's what brought the Finance Corps from number 1 on my list to number 4 on my list. Number 3 on my list was AG. AG stands for Adjutant General. These personnel in the Army handle your human resource type thing. So they'll handle all the paperwork regarding soldiers in the military. So they will make sure all your awards that you've achieved are documented on your soldier record brief or your officer record brief. They will ensure that your security clearances are listed on your record. They'll make sure everything that's associated with you on paper checks out. All of your assignments are listed in a chronological order, in a proper format, if you will. I felt that could be very applicable in the civilian sector, so I had that higher on my list, but for the same reason, high branch detail likelihood, so kind of dropped it a little bit on my list. So Adjutant General was my number 3. The number 2 on my list, it actually was number 1 for the longest time, but I made it my number 2 for several reasons. So number 2 on my list was the Medical Service Corps. Medical Service Corps are personnel in the United States Army. Basically, they go to medical units. So you could go to a veterinarian service unit, you could go to a dental unit, which I was in for all of the 6-7 years that I've been in the military. I was actually medical service on the enlisted side, so that's a no-brainer why I would want to go to the Medical Service Corps on the officer side. But things that I'm going to get into next is going to tell you why I switched my number 1 preference from number 2 to number 1 and vice versa, because medical service was my number 1 initially, but I switched it to my number 2 because of my number 1 choice. My number 1 choice is the Quartermaster Corps. The reason I chose the Quartermaster Corps is for several reasons. For those of you who don't know, I'm in college currently. I am a business major, business management major. So from a business perspective, I felt that a quartermaster, or basically a logistician, a person that is in charge of the coordination of supplies, making sure things are accounted for in the military, that's a very applicable skill in the United States civilian sector. For instance, one of the largest firms in the world, the second $1 trillion valuation company in the United States or in the world, is Amazon. Amazon is a guru, is like one of the best logistics companies in the world. So that right there lets you know that logistics runs commerce in today's society. Walmart is big in logistics. There are a lot of huge firms in the civilian sector that are big in logistics. So the reason that I switched medical service from number 1 to number 2 is I went to advanced camp, which is this 37-day training that I had to go to. It was one of the commissioner requirements for me to commission as a second lieutenant next year. When I got to the end of that training, I spoke with a liaison regarding the Medical Service Corps, and he told me that in order to be a medical logistician, which is the medical version of a logistician, which I want to be in the Quartermaster Corps, they told me that it would take 6 to 8 years to elect an AOC, which is 70 kilo medical logistician. It would take 6 to 8 years. The AOC is an area of concentration. The Medical Service Corps has 19 of those, so you could be a scientist, all this other stuff. But one of those 19 areas of concentrations in the Medical Service Corps is medical logistician. But since it would take 6 to 8 years, that kind of deterred me from staying in the Medical Service Corps, versus if I'm a quartermaster officer, I can still be a logistician. I won't be a medical logistician. I can handle all other types of logistics except the medical logistics, and I will be able to do that right away. So right away, 6 to 8 years. Right away, 1 for me. So in a snapshot, the 5 branches from top to bottom. Number 1, I put quartermaster as my hopeful. Number 2, medical service. Number 3, adjutant general or AG. Number 4 was finance, and number 5 was transportation. Now, the moment that you guys have all been waiting for. What did I exactly get for my branch reveal? I got the Quartermaster Corps. I got my number 1 choice without having to do a branch detail or without having to do an ADSO. For those of you who do not know what an ADSO is, an ADSO is when you add about 3 years to your contract in exchange for a higher percentage chance of you getting the branch that you want. I didn't have to do any of those things by the grace of God, and I was able to get my number 1 choice. When I found out that I got the Quartermaster Corps, I was so heads over heels for this branch. I wanted to do it ever since I got from camp. I got back from camp, I would say around late May, early June time frame. I was in 5th Reg, for those of you who know what advanced camp is. But like when I found out that I got the Quartermaster Corps, I was so happy. I'm going to be a part of the Corps whose slogan is supporting victory. Obviously, anybody that knows military operations, they are only as good as you can supply the fight. All resources run out, so they have to be sustained, and that's what brings militaries to victory. And I will be in the Corps that makes this happen. I couldn't be happier for this happening for me. If you enjoyed this video, if you found this video helpful in any way, please consider subscribing and hit that post notification bell. I would really appreciate it. Also, let me know in the comment section below any videos you would like to see in the future. Follow me on KeyRub on Instagram and Twitter. And I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace.